Hey guys, welcome back to Kayla Cook's channel, where you can see your favorite delicious recipes being made. Are you guys ready for some agege bread? Well, agege bread is a Nigerian typical sweetbread recipe, and I love it. I can't get enough of it. It really reminds me of our Hawaiian rolls that we eat, which are sweet and super fluffy. So as you can see, I'm adding my organic raw brown turbinado sugar, and I'm also adding cane sugar. So they're actually mixed together and it's half a cup. I'm adding the salt, and the recipe does call for vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid, and it does say that you can replace the ascorbic acid with apple cider vinegar if you don't have it. I added in my egg. Also added in some vanilla just for my own personal touch, even though the recipe doesn't call for it. It just gives it a little bit of character, even though you really can't taste it. And I also added my almond milk that I prefer to use because I don't really drink milk that much. I guess you could call me old school for the fact that I chose to do everything by hand, but I'll tell you a little bit more why later. But yes, you could use a hand mixer at this point just to get the dough to come together. I haven't made bread in such a long time. Like, I probably have only made it with a parent, so this was pretty much one of my first times making it on my own, and it requires so much elbow grease, from hand mixing to the kneading. It takes a lot of work, and I do have a hand mixer, but I was making this for a friend that was visiting from out of town. So I wanted to do everything by hand. I wanted it to have my special touch on it, you know, made with love when you haven't seen someone in a really long time. So I did want to mix the entire bread from scratch, and I also wanted it to be mixed from hand. So the recipe that I used said for 3 cups of flour, and obviously all the environments are different with different humidities. So I needed 3 cups of flour to make the mix, but I probably needed a whole cup of flour to add to this dough. It was extremely sticky. So I added about a half cup, but then you'll see that I added another half cup of flour just for the mixing process because it was extremely sticky. And don't be afraid to add more flour, but make sure you're following a little by little process. You do not want to add too much flour at a time, because what you don't want is to have tough, dry bread. That's not what you're going for. Agege bread is soft and sweet, and it's fluffy. So make sure that you're adding your flour gradually. Oh, it's set timer for 5 minutes. So basically, you're going to be kneading this dough for 10 minutes. 5 minutes of just kneading it into a round ball and mixing. And this is what people would be doing at this point if they had a hand mixer, just to get it into that one together ball before they transfer it onto the countertop. At this point, since I'm using my hands completely, everything is going to be done by hand. So it's going to be 5 minutes for the first part of mixing, where you're just getting it into one ball. And then another 5 minutes is where you're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter and mix in that butter right before you set your dough to rise. So you can see that I'm working on my countertop. It's been thoroughly disinfected before I went ahead and got started. What you're going to do is use a nice multi-purpose disinfectant spray that you like. Go ahead and clean your countertop thoroughly. And after about a minute after you've cleaned it, you're going to go back over it with a wet paper towel and clear off all of that disinfectant, because what you don't want to do is ingest any of that disinfectant spray. So I've got a clean countertop, and that's what they're used for. They're supposed to be used for you to work on. It was right about here that I started to get a little discouraged, but I want to say trust the process and trust the recipes, because your dough might start to feel like it's disintegrating, it's not sticking together, but kneading takes time. All great things take time. So you have to just continue to knead, work your dough, and it'll work out eventually. Also, you can see I'm doing everything by hand, and the reason why is I feel like it has a little bit more of a personal touch. Of course, my hands are super, super clean. I'm a nursing student, so I actually know how to do aseptic technique and make sure my hands are clean, but I really do make sure that I'm using clean surfaces and clean hands. And this bread I was also making as a gift for someone who I used to eat agege bread with quite often when we'd go to our Nigerian restaurants. So I wanted to make her some bread when she came to visit from out of town. You can see here that the consistency is finally starting to come together, and I'm so happy at this point. It looks like real dough.
Alexa, how much time left on the timer?
You have 10 seconds left on your 5-minute timer.
All right.
And yes, you can see I was starting to get a little bit tired, but I was almost done. That was about 10 minutes of kneading.
Alexa, stop timer.
So I'm about to lay the dough to rest, but I'm buttering a surface for it to rise. And I'm going to let it sit for at least an hour. Oh, look at that. It's so exciting when things actually go according to plan. The dough has officially doubled in size, which it's supposed to do. So this is where the recipe says you're supposed to punch down the dough, and I wasn't punching down nothing. Okay, I worked really hard on this, and I wasn't about to ruin all the rising that I had going on. So I just, worked the dough lightly on a floured surface that I cleaned again. And basically, I'm just going to be folding it over gently, and then I'm going to get a nice roll going. So that's the whole way that Agege bread is made. It's rolled. And basically it's rolled just like a dinner roll and a classic dinner roll. And I really didn't know that. So clearly I haven't been doing a whole lot of bread baking. I mostly do desserts. But, I'm stepping my game up, and it was kind of a cool experience just to see how it's done. So the next step is to butter lightly and flour two loaf pans that you're going to be baking the bread in. And basically you're just going to butter it, and then you're going to dust the pans with flour, the same flour you used to bake with. So I'm using this aluminum pan because this was going to be the one as a gift for my friend. Wasn't really sure which one was going to be which, but whichever one came out the prettiest. And make sure you tap out all the excess flour, because you don't really need to be eating that flour. You're just using it so that you can get a nice detachment from the pan when you're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and cover up the loaves again with the same towel. Lightly cover them up in a warm area. And you can see that they've doubled in size. I let them sit for 45 minutes. They're going to go into the oven, 350 degrees, for 20 minutes. And you can see that I have a nice little container of water that will help the bread to rise. Voila! The pans have come out the oven. The bread has risen nicely. And the bread is super, super hot. So I'm buttering it as the recipe says to get a nice shiny loaf. I'm super happy with the way these came out. Super soft and chewy and fluffy and delicious. Be sure to like and subscribe, guys. Thanks so much for watching.
So happy.